Woman decided to help the sick. Cheetah, what happened after will shock you. We usually see big cats as dangerous, untouchable creatures. But when a sick cheetah stopped eating and began to fade away, one brave zookeeper broke every rule to save him. What she did was risky, but no one expected the shocking twist that came years later. The story begins with a woman named Ozella, a kind-hearted zookeeper who worked in a small zoo in Russia. Ozella didn't work for money or fame. She worked because she truly loved animals. Her job wasn't just a duty, it was her passion. Even after her shift ended, she stayed behind, making sure every animal was safe, fed, and happy. Every day, she walked through the zoo with a warm smile, gently talking to the animals as if they were her closest friends. Her love for them was real, and everyone at the zoo knew it. But Ozella had no idea that her calm, happy world was about to change. That day, the zoo welcomed a new animal, a male cheetah named Zephr. The staff was full of excitement. Cheetahs were rare, and everyone looked forward to meeting him. But something felt strange. Zephr didn't act like other new animals. He didn't explore his space, sniff the air, or even look around. Instead, he quietly walked into his enclosure and lay down without a sound. He seemed tired, maybe even sad. Everyone thought he just needed rest after a long journey, so they gave him space and hoped he'd feel better by morning. But when the sun came up, things took a turn for the worse. When the zookeepers came to check on Zephr the next morning, they froze. He was still lying in the same spot as yesterday, not having moved at all. His food bowl was full, completely untouched. That's when worry crept in. At first, they thought he might be shy or nervous in his new home. Moving could be stressful, even for a big cat like him. They tried everything: fresh meat, clean water, gentle voices. But Zephr didn't respond. He wouldn't eat or drink a single thing. Something was clearly wrong. The zoo quickly called in a vet. After a careful checkup, the vet gave the sad news. Zephr had caught a cold during the long trip, and it had turned into pneumonia. He needed medicine right away. Without it, his condition would get worse. But there was one big problem. The medicine had to be taken with food or water, and Zephr still wasn't eating. Every day he grew weaker. His eyes turned red, his fur lost its shine, and he became so thin his ribs started to show. Even standing was hard. His legs shook, and sometimes he would just fall. The staff tried everything. But no matter what they did, the cheetah still refused to eat. Everyone was losing hope, but Ozella couldn't let go. She had spent her life caring for animals and loving them like family. Watching Zephr get weaker each day broke her heart. She knew if he didn't take the medicine soon, he might not survive. Then she had an idea, a risky one. What if she hand-fed him? The other staff members said no. It was too dangerous. Zephr was a wild animal, and even though he was sick, he could still attack. Especially in pain, animals could be unpredictable. But Ozella didn't care. She couldn't stand by and do nothing. One quiet afternoon, when no one was watching, Ozella made her move. She opened the gate to Zephyr's enclosure with a piece of fresh meat in her hand. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was pounding, but she walked forward slowly. Zephr didn't move. He looked tired, his eyes dull and half-closed. Ozella knelt down and held out the meat. At first, Zephr growled softly, showing his teeth. She didn't back away. Instead, she dipped the meat in water and gently offered it again. To her surprise, Zephr leaned forward and licked the water from the meat. It was only a little, but it gave Ozella hope. She tried again. This time, he took a small bite. She rushed to get the medicine and carefully mixed a tiny amount into the meat. Day by day, she returned, feeding him with love and patience. Zephr started eating more, and little by little his strength returned. Slowly but surely, the medicine began to work. Days passed. Zephr slowly began to change. He stood up more, took small walks around his enclosure, and started looking around with curious eyes again. The same cheetah who once looked lifeless was now showing signs of hope. Everyone at the zoo was surprised. How did this happen? The vet later told the staff that Ozella had taken the medicine from his office. When the zoo authorities asked her about it, she told them everything, how she had risked her safety to feed Zephr by hand, mixing the medicine into small pieces of meat. At first, the staff was shocked. What she did was dangerous, but now that Zephr was healing, they couldn't be mad. Her courage had saved his life. Then, one morning, something beautiful happened. Zephr stood up and gently walked over to Ozella. He rubbed his head against her legs like a house cat, saying, "Thank you." Ozella's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and gently petted his head. Zephr purred softly, something no one expected from a wild cat. From that day on, their bond grew stronger. Zephr waited for her every day. But just when everything felt right again, life threw them a cruel twist. 1 year after Zephr came to the zoo, Ozella was called into a meeting. She had a strange feeling in her chest as she sat down. Then came the news that broke her heart. The zoo could no longer afford to keep Zephr. His food, medicine, and care were too costly. The staff tried to explain, but all Ozella could hear was the sound of her heart sinking. Then came the worst part. They had sold Zephr to a traveling circus. Ozella couldn't believe it. She had risked everything to save that cheetah. She had fed him with her own hands, watched him get stronger, and formed a bond deeper than words. And now, they were sending him away like he didn't matter. On the day the circus arrived to take him, Zephr knew something was wrong. He growled and fought inside the cage, refusing to go quietly. Ozella stood nearby, crying. She whispered goodbye, but the noise drowned out her voice. For 4 long years, she heard nothing about Zephr. The circus kept moving, and she had no idea where they had taken him. Days turned into months, months into years. Then, one summer afternoon, Ozella saw a poster near her home. The same traveling circus had come back to town. They were bringing a few animals to the local zoo for filming. One name caught her attention, a blind cheetah. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be Zephr? She followed a circus worker to a small room where the animals were kept. Her hands trembled. Inside, a thin, tired-looking cheetah was eating slowly. His eyes were cloudy. He looked worn out and old. Ozella asked the worker about him, then something amazing happened. The cheetah froze, stopped eating, and turned toward her voice. Then came a sharp, familiar sound, a loud meow. Ozella gasped. She knew that sound. It was Zephr. Without thinking, she rushed to the cage and opened it. Zephr slowly walked to her and gently rubbed his head against her legs, just like he used to. Ozella dropped to her knees and hugged him tight, tears running down her cheeks. Even though he couldn't see, Zephr remembered the one person who had never stopped loving him. They had been apart for 4 long years. But in that one moment, it felt like no time had passed at all. Ozella knelt beside Zephr, her heart full. She realized something true. Real love doesn't fade. It lives quietly, even in silence, even in distance. Zephr had never forgotten her, and she had never stopped believing he would remember her.